Shalom Aleichem, everybody. I wanted to share with you a quick and important idea that emanates from Parshat Noach. If you take a look at one of my very favorite books that I've read in the past couple of years, Rabbi Jonathan Sacks, the former chief rabbi of Great Britain, has a book called To Heal a Fractured World. And in one of the chapters, he develops a vision of four early archetypes of personalities emanating from Sefer Parshas Bereshis and Parshas Noach. He has the Adam Harishon personality. He develops a vision of the Cain Vehevel story, Noach, and then Avram Avinu. And it's very common to contrast Avram and Noach because, of course, Avram is the paradigm of the Isha Chesed, a person who's involved in the world, who wants to fix the world. And we see that in Avram's life in many different contexts. For example, you'll see it in the context of stone. And Avram is not satisfied. If Hashem says, I want to destroy the city of stone, Avram does not sit back and say, okay, whatever you want. He goes ahead and does battle on behalf of stone. If there are 50 tzaddikim, 45, 40, 30, 20, he's not going to let that go. When it comes to Kiruv, Avram Avinu is the Mekarev par excellence. And this Hanefesh Asher Asu B'Charan, he's a Mekarev. Hachnasas Orchim. That's again, Avram's the paradigm of Hachnasas Orchim. He's a warrior, he's a man of the world, he's always looking to help other people. And Rabbi Sacks contrasts the Avram personality with the Noach personality. And Noach goes ahead, and when the world is about to be destroyed, and Hashem tells him, my plan is to destroy the world. So what does Noach do? Noach seals himself. He closes himself in his teva. He cloisters himself, closets himself, and whatever happens to the world seems to happen to the world, and that is not necessarily a concern of his. He goes ahead and he saves himself, he saves his family, and in order to perpetuate the world. And many of the later Mefarshim, contrast the Avram approach, who's really there to fix the world, and the Noach approach, where he kind of saves himself, he closets himself in his own Dalet Amos, protects himself from, if you will, the turbulent waters of the outside world, and saves himself and lets the world perish. And indeed, there certainly is an approach in Chazal that says that's exactly was Noach's downfall. And indeed, the first Rashi, very famous Rashi, tells us on the Pasuk that Noach was Ish Tzadik Tamim Haya B'Dorosav. So Rashi right away sets up a contrast. What does it mean that he was an Ish Tzadik Tamim B'Dorosav? So Yesh Dorshim L'Gnai. There are those who say that was L'Gnai. It was coming to look at Noach in a less than favorable light. Indeed, he was a tzaddik in his door. What does it mean he was a tzaddik in his door? Yeah, his door was the door of Rishon. But had he lived in the door of Avram Avinu, he wouldn't have been such a tzaddik. Yesh dorshim l'gnai. But then, of course, yesh dorshim l'shvach. And some look at Noach in a very, very favorable fashion. After all, if he was in a door of tzaddikim, wow, then he would have been an amazing tzaddik. He would have been so much greater. And it's in the door of Rishon where he still managed to be a tzaddik. That's a tremendous, tremendous accomplishment. And that is indeed, there are two approaches in Noach. Was he an absolute tzaddik, and had he been in a door of tzaddik, he would have been even greater? Or perhaps he was not such a big tzaddik. Again, relative to his generation, he was great, but not relative to, let's say, the generation of Avram Avinu. And indeed, you find this in other midrashim. You find one's medrash indicates that the waters, the Mabul, were referred to as Mei Noach, because indeed Noach had a responsibility to save the rest of the people of the world, and he didn't go ahead and do so. So you have certain midrashim that look at Noach in a negative light. Other midrashim laud Noach, and perhaps one can suggest, and maybe a big lesson for our times as well, is that was Noach right, was he not right? So maybe that's another aspect of the idea of Yesh Dorshim L'Shvach and Yesh Dorshim L'Gnai. Perhaps one could argue, as we just said earlier, is that yes, Noach had an opportunity to save the world, or to save some members of the world. And what did he do? He closed ranks, he locked himself up in a teva, protected himself and his family, And what happened outside the Teva, knew that was not his responsibility. And there the contrast to Avram is very striking. And so one could say, Yesh Dorshim L'Gnai. But perhaps one could look at it from another perspective as well. And I think there's an important lesson on both sides of the coin here. And maybe that's what Chazal are telling us. Is that maybe Noach also had a sense of self. And maybe Noach understood, you know what? I'm not an Avram Avinu. I'm not someone who could engage the world and the challenges of the world around me and emerge victorious and emerge clean and not soiled by the corruption of the world around me. Maybe Noach understood himself, and maybe Noach understood his weakness, and had he gone out and tried to fix the corruption of the world around him, fix the Gilui Arayos, fix the Gezel, fix all those problems, maybe anytime you engage, so you know there's a risk. You might influence others, but others might influence you. And perhaps one can argue that Noach had that sense of self-awareness and understood that if I go out and try to be that Avram Avinu, maybe I'm going to be pulled as opposed to me pulling others. And a person has to understand himself. And any time, and perhaps that's the vision of Yesh Dorshim L'Gnai and Yesh Dorshim L'Shvach. Maybe we actually can applaud Noach because he understood himself, and he did not go out because he knew had he gone out, that could have been very negative to him. That could have had a deleterious effect on himself. Or maybe no, he could have influenced other people. Maybe that's the idea of Yesh Dorshim L'Shvach and Yesh Dorshim L'Gnai, is that we live in a very, very turbulent world. There's a lot of things in the outside world that are very contrary to Yiddishkeit, to Torah values, to what we're all about. And a person has to make a tough decision. Sometimes it's a tough call. If he goes out and tries to fix the world, you know what? He might be very successful as a kiruv worker, might have a tremendous influence in bringing people closer. That's amazing. You know what could also happen is he goes out into the world and the world has an influence on him. I heard once, I believe, in the name of one of the Hasidic Rebbes, I'm trying to remember who. I don't remember who. Perhaps it was the Kutzber. But it says that if someone slips in the mud and you go out to help them out of the mud, which you certainly should do, but don't expect that you're going to help them out of the mud and not yourself get muddied. You'll also get muddied. And a person has to know who he is, and has to know his context, has to know the situation. Sometimes, for sure, nothing to talk about. You help him out of the mud, and even if you will get a little muddy, but you're going to save him, you'll go ahead and do so. Sometimes, maybe he's a very big guy, and when you're trying to pull him out of the mud, what's really going to happen, he's going to pull you into the mud. And you're not going to even pull him out anyway, and you're going to get pulled down. So you have to know yourself. So Yesh Dorshim L'Shvach, Yesh Dorshim L'Gnai. On the one hand, we could look at Noach and compare him to Avram Avinu and say, he is no Avram. He is no Avram. He could have done so much more, and he didn't. And that's Yesh Dorshim L'Gnai. On the other hand, one can also say, perhaps he had a sense of who he was, what he could do, what he could not do, what he could accomplish, what he could not. And Yesh Dorshim L'Shvach. He understood his limitations. And to also have that sense of understanding who you are, not this sense of arrogance that I can do it all when perhaps you can't. So that's also an important midah. So perhaps we can look at this very interesting and complex Torah personality we have as Noach and see both sides. And perhaps that's many, many of us, that we also have these two sides. And sometimes we could do much more than we're doing. We could really fix and help other people. And sometimes, perhaps, it might be wise sometimes to close ranks and not try and save the world, because that's going to have an influence on us as well. So know yourself, definitely do what you can to help the world, to help other people, but also know your limitations. And when the outside world is going to have an impact on you, perhaps that's the time that you have to close ranks. Both aspects are very true, something always to keep in mind.